Jesse Foster welcomes you to Father Nation, where other dads illuminate your path to become a better father. Prepare to enter into the man cave.
And welcome to Father Nation. This is host Jesse Foster. And on Father Nation, we talk to various dads around the nation about their personal experiences as a dad. Father Nation today is made possible in part by Al Cole from CBS Radio and his nationally syndicated show, People of Distinction. Among the shows heard on the People of Distinction broadcasting network include the show by actress Dee Wallace, who played the part of a mother in the movie E.T. Father Nation is now airing over the Live 365 network, in addition to the iTunes Radio network, which is exclusive territory. I'm excited today to have Guy Gilchrist on the show. He's a cartoonist of a famous Nancy and Sluggo comic, and he resides in Tennessee. Guy, thank you so much for coming on Father Nation today. And can you tell us more about your work as a comic writer and what you do there with Nancy?
I loved cartoons ever since I was a kid. So I started out all through junior high and high school, writing and drawing. Being a cartoonist isn't just drawing; it's also writing for me. I actually consider myself a writer who hires the cheapest illustrator he can find, which is me. I started out, my first big professional break was with Weekly Reader books, which were, and I did comic books and interactive game books for children 7 to 14 with the Weekly Reader group. And I started going out to schools and talking at schools because that's where they sold their stuff. And I always enjoyed teaching kids how to draw and telling them stories and making them laugh and motivating them. And from there, my big break came when I got a job with Jim Henson, the creator of all of the Muppets. Jim wanted a comic strip based on the Muppet Show in the 1980s, which was, of course, wildly successful, the most successful show on TV. And so I wrote and drew the Muppets comic strip that was in newspapers all around the world. And again, that gave me an opportunity now to go all throughout the country and be known throughout the whole world and be able to work with kids and speak with kids. Of course, I was, on one hand, I had a very, very hectic schedule, which made parenting difficult. But on the other hand, when I was drawing and not touring, I was always at home. And so for long stretches of time, I was around my children, and I was around my children a lot. Growing up, I didn't go to work every day outside the home. My job was in a home studio. And so I got to see my children grow up that way. The other thing was I was a popular dad because I could draw all the Muppets and all the characters that all the kids loved, And from there, working with Jim on the Muppets, and I worked on Muppet Babies and Fraggle Rock, and eventually left Jim, wrote my own children's books, wrote about 56 of them so far over all of these years, and again extensively toured and talked with kids. And I love going to schools and museums and being around children and motivating them to be the best that they can be and take their dreams, turn them into goals, and eventually make those realities. It's a big thing with me. The future, then in between all of it, while I was doing all those children's books that I was writing and drawing with my own characters like Mud Pie and the Tiny Dinos, and there's a really sort of famous little golden book called Just Imagine that I wrote and drew. It's little fairy tale rhymes. Then eventually I started writing and drawing the Nancy comic strip in 1995, and that's been the last 20 years of my life.
You've written the Pink Panther also?
Yeah, I worked on the Pink Panther. That was a school project. The Pink Panther what was going on was it was the late 80s, and the people that owned the Pink Panther asked me if I could come up with some sort of a program or an idea that would make Pink Panther relevant to kids in urban schools. And so I made up I had an idea, and I wrote Pink Says Think. And I drew the Pink Panther with a leather jacket looking really cool, leaning up against a wall. And it became a national campaign to keep kids in school reading, and in some areas to say no to drugs. And they did television commercials and all of that kind of stuff. I'm very, very proud of that, working on Pink Panther. I also worked on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Looney Tunes, Tiny Toons, and what am I forgetting? Tom and Jerry. You can't forget Tom and Jerry.
Well, you have an extensive portfolio there.
I keep a job, you know?
Would you have a specific favorite from all those?
No, actually not. You know, my favorite is always what I'm working on at this very moment. That has to be the case if you're trying real hard. I mean, certainly the Muppets was my big thing, and Jim Henson was my creative father. So certainly I have a very, very warm spot in my heart. But then I created all my own characters in all those children's books. And of course, Nancy and Sluggo and all of those kids have been, you know, at the end of my pen and brush for the last 20 years. So really and truly, whatever I'm working on and writing at that time becomes the only thing that I'm dealing with, because I need that to be the very, very best that it can be. And I want to give everything that I have. You know, God gives us all gifts, and I've been very blessed. One of the gifts that He's given me is focus. And while I may be juggling many, many jobs, you know, in my career, as a parent, as a boss, as a speaker, a touring speaker, you know, as a musician, as all of these different things, when I'm writing the Nancy comic strip, it's all that I'm doing. And when I'm drawing it, it's all that I'm doing. And when I'm talking to you on the phone, doing this interview, it's all that I'm doing.
Well, you've been doing the Nancy comic now, you said, for about 20 years. And I can imagine, you know, that's a lot of comics. And with Nancy, you have a daughter. Have you used anything your daughter has done in real life in the Nancy comic strips?
Oh, yeah. I've used, well, by the time I was doing Nancy, my daughter was in her teens. But certainly, I used things that Lauren and Julia both did in the comic. And they both also, you know, Nancy every once in a while would have a friend named Lauren or Julia, you know, or Amber, my granddaughter. Oh, certainly all of the things that I see and all of the things that we do, they're all, you know, I guess I should wear a warning label on my shirt that says, you're dealing here with a cartoonist today, so anything you do or say just might wind up in a comic strip.
Yeah, that's very true. You just need that.
That's how it really is. You know, people try to tell me jokes to put in the strip, and that never works. But you know what? People are very, very funny when they don't mean to be and when they don't think they're being funny.
I bet as a comic writer, you always have to be very observant, always trying to think about what could go in the comic, maybe write down something as soon as you have an idea. Do you find yourself as a very observant person?
Oh, I believe so. I pay very close attention. I listen, I watch, I look. I love to people watch. I love to listen to kids talking. You know, I have actually picked up conversations of theirs verbatim and put them into the comic strip. I remember one time I was doing a talk at a school, and while I was getting ready, these two kids were saying, one kid was saying to the other one, I really wish that we could have a snow day. And the other kid said, well, if you take a mitten and you put it under your pillow, Frankie told me that if you put the mitten under your pillow at night, tonight, that in the morning when we wake up, there'll be snow and we won't have school. And the kid says, I never heard about that. And the other kid says back to the kid, hey, it's not my problem if you're not in the loop. I mean, come on, I couldn't write that. That's awesome. Come on, it's not my fault you're not in the loop. I mean, you know, what kind of third graders say this? It's awesome. So that wound up in Nancy, of course.
Yeah, I'm sure that all kinds of things kids say can end up potentially in a comic. That's just what comes naturally. Again, right now you're listening to Father Nation with Jesse Foster. And today we have Guy Gilchrist, writer of the comic strip Nancy, on the show. The website is nancyandsluggo.com. And let's turn the corner here, Guy, and talk about a daddy dud. Maybe a time in your parenting past when you made a mistake, but also maybe something you might have learned from it.
As a father?
Yes, as a father.
Oh, there have been a lot of them. I'll tell you something I think about every once in a while, though. I coached baseball for 10 years. I absolutely loved baseball. I was pretty good at baseball as a player, but I really enjoyed coaching. And I used to really get a kick out of training a kid, teaching a kid a skill and seeing that kid excel. I don't think, ever really pushy with kids. But we used to train the kids pretty hard in practice, and then of course on game day, all you do is rah 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 because kids, are feeling the tension and they want to win. And this was a long time ago. There's all these stories now, of parents going crazy and yelling at refs and all that kind of stuff and umpires and whatnot. And that did happen in my day too. But I remember my own son didn't like to take instruction from me. And I think it was because he felt that I was pushing him too hard. And he didn't like baseball as much as I had liked baseball. I believed that team sports was a way to really learn a lot about, how to be a team player, how to care for other people, how to take responsibility on yourself, but it wasn't all about you, it was about the team. There's a lot of wonderful things that you learn from baseball. I was never one of those guys that expected any of my kids to make the major leagues. I just expected them to do the best they could. Well, I remember one day my son absolutely crying and everything after a game and wanting to quit the game. And I felt responsible. That he felt that he was letting, that he was letting me down and that kind of thing. And after that, and I learned a lesson. And the lesson was, don't expect your kids to always love everything that you do. Everybody's not into everything. My son, Garrett, is a brilliant artist, filmmaker. He just wasn't really into sports. And he didn't ever find the correlation between, sports and life like I felt that I did. So I backed off of that. And that was a good lesson for me. I learned that, your kids aren't you. They're not a mirror of you. You're going to see things in them, for instance, of course, him being an artist and a writer and a filmmaker and stuff. yeah, he's a chip off the old block in that regard. And he's wonderful. He's a super talented guy. But in other ways, he's his own guy. For instance, he's really computer and tech savvy, where I'm a Neanderthal when it comes to that. And, and we're all different. And, now with the looking back, and as I said, that's just one little story. I've made tons and tons of mistakes, certainly, over the years. But, one of the nice things about being a writer is I can tell that story in a book or online in a column or in a comic. And I can use my own weaknesses and my own failures, as well as, my own comedies of life and all of the goofy, silly things that happen, and some of the sad things that happen. All of it becomes teachable moments that we can, and entertaining moments for other people that follow me in the work that I do.
I can imagine coaching your son's baseball team. Was it easier coaching your son or other kids?
Actually, that's something that all of us, all of the coaches finally realized, was that what we did was we wouldn't give advice to our own children because we realized the kids wouldn't take advice from us. So what we would do is anything that we wanted our own children to know, the other coaches, we would tell the other coaches. So I would work with the kids from the other coaches, and the other coaches would work with my kid, and we would all work with each other's, because a child is much, much more likely to take the advice of someone who's not their dad or their mom, and we realized that, and we all jumped aboard that train, and we were much more successful that way.
So it's interesting how many kids are like that when you get on a sports team, that as a parent, it might be more difficult to reach your own kids sometimes. I'm not sure exactly why that is.
It's not only with the sports, it's like, as kids get older and you're talking to them about staying in school or staying off drugs and, or a moral way to live, or even things about, other social things, friendships and, all the things that happen with kids in school. You can talk to your blue in the face, to your child, and they don't listen to you, and then someone, another parent says exactly what you've been saying, and they come and they tell you this like it's brand new material. And you're just so grateful that they heard it from someone and that they're following, someone's guidance.
I guess as long as you're hearing it from somebody.
So, us adults, do you take your own advice? No, you probably don't. I don't either.
Let's talk about habits. Is there any specific habit as a dad that you had as you were raising your kids that helped make you a better dad?
I made a point, for instance, to whenever possible, when they came home from school, of course I'd let them, let them decompress a little bit. They'd watch cartoons or something for half an hour and have a snack and stuff when they came home. But if I at all possible, I would not schedule a business meeting or anything like that when I knew the kids were coming home from school and I was working in my home studio. I tried very hard to at least spend 15 or 20 minutes with them in between when they came home from school and dinner, just hanging out with them. I also made it a habit, since I had the two children, and then I had Julia was a decade later. But when I had Lauren and Garrett, I tried to take them out and do activities, not just them together, but me and them separately. Go out with my daughter and do things that she enjoyed. Go out with my son and do things that he enjoyed. I think that my kids knew me really well. I was around a lot, especially when they were very young. By the time they were getting in their 10, 11, 12, I was doing book tours quite a bit. And so I'd be gone for a couple of weeks and then home for a week, gone for a couple of weeks, home for a week. And that made the time together much more precious. But the habit that I had, another habit that I had was at least a couple times a week when I was home, I would make them dinner, stuff that I knew like was their favorite food, and I would make it for them. And I would show them how to make it, things like that, Just do things around the kitchen and do things around the yard and everything together that had nothing to do with my job.
And being a dad that worked from home, you probably were around your children, maybe more than an average dad, but I'm sure you still actually had to, focus on work and separate work from home and consciously try and spend time with them, even though you were at home.
Oh yeah, and the other thing is though, I've got a strange gig, with the comic strips, I never have a day off, and so I think it all evens out. The people that are people that work, let's say 9 to 5, they probably, I was always working all kinds of weird hours. And maybe weekends and holidays, I didn't have as much free time as I would have around my kids. So I think it evens out. I think that we all, as fathers, the main thing is we can't forget that what we're doing for a living, and we're trying to make a better life for our kids, we can't let that living get in the way where we don't know our kids. We're working so hard to provide for them and working so hard, and I know it's really, really hard, that we, that the kids don't think that we're there for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey Guy, what is one quote about fatherhood that maybe you've used in the Nancy comic strip, or maybe just a quote that you have in your head, or maybe a quote that you've heard someone else say on fatherhood? Is there a quote that you can tell Father Nation today?
Yeah. My children's mother and I divorced. Now, this has never been in a strip or anything like that, but this is something that I lived by. There was sometimes in storms of life, the kids when Mary, my first wife, and I divorced, there was a lot of bad feelings and a lot of bad actions and a lot of bad everything going on. And I realized how fragile love was. Love with your children, love. And as my kids got older, what I decided while I was going through the divorce, I was never going to say anything in front of my children about their mom, no matter what was going on. I just wasn't. I wouldn't do it. Because I didn't want them to feel like they had to take sides. And I wanted them to know how much I loved them, and that was all that really mattered. As they got older, and you have arguments with your children, there's a lot flying, I always told myself, the quote of me that I always told myself was, don't ever say something to your kids that you wish you could take back, because you can't take it back. Don't say something in haste that can become a permanent scar. And I've passed that on to my children, and I know my daughter Lauren lives by that, raising her daughter now.
That's great advice. I think with the tongue, it's very hard to control sometimes, but we have to. If we say something, we can ask for forgiveness, but oftentimes the hurt will last. Something that gets said, that can sometimes be something that you carry around with you like a rock
for years, and your kid carries around like a rock for years. You know, I came from not a great home life, and I had a stepfather who was not a nice guy. He was verbally and every other kind of abusive. And so I was always very, very careful about what I did and what I said. You know, I always looked at, you know, I thought he was a great teacher on how to be a father because I just did the opposite of everything he did. And it worked out okay. I remember not talking to him one time for 2 years after I got out of graduated from high school. And it tears you up. It tears you up. You know, we talk about, you know, God tells us, you know, to forgive. Why does he tell us to forgive? It's not for the person that did the damage. It's for you. You know, that's the person that did the damage may not care. But you need to forgive because you need to forgive yourself. You can't walk around with that rock. You can't carry the rock. It's eventually going to get too darn heavy. And by the way, while you're carrying that rock around, you don't have your hands free to catch all of the amazing treasures that are falling from heaven, that God is throwing your way every single day. And you don't have your hands free to fold in prayer for guidance and for thankfulness. You got to not carry that rock, man.
And Guy, before we finish up today, let's talk about your upcoming trip to Haiti.
Yeah, actually, when you called, I was just getting ready to. We're just about ready to go. I've been working with a group called Cross International. They are a Christian organization that get orphans and the neediest of the needy off the streets into mission homes, into mission schools, give children an education, possibly in a school uniform, the only clothes that they own, the only shoes that they own. When they feed them at school, it may be the only meal that anyone in their family has that day. When anybody buys anything, any Nancy stuff, either at any of my appearances or over the web at nancyandsluggo.com, part of the tithing that I do, 10% goes to orphans because Nancy and Sluggo are orphans. And we all deserve a second chance at life. I was invited a month or so ago to go down to Haiti and work with the children, entertain them. I'm bringing my guitar down. I'm going to bring some art supplies down. I'm going to sing some songs and stuff and draw some pictures for them and also help in any way that I can. I'm bringing my assistant on the Nancy comic strip, Anna Marie Guthrie. She's going to come with me. And I'm looking forward to seeing firsthand the incredible work that these folks are doing. I know that it's going to be a life-changing experience.
You've been listening to Father Nation with Guy Gilchrist today. Father Nation is a place where various dads come on the show, talk about fatherhood, learn about the successes and failures of other dads so that you can take action and become a better dad yourself. Father Nation is made possible in part by Al Cole from CBS Radio. He partners with the iTunes Radio Network, Live 365 Network. Among the talk shows heard on the Al Cole People of Distinction Network include the show of actress Dee Wallace, who played the mother in Steven Spielberg's E.T. Guy Gilchrist is certainly a person of distinction, the writer of Nancy comic strip. If you liked what you heard today, head on over to nancyandsluggo.com. And Guy, I want to thank you for coming on Father Nation.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the funny papers.
Hey, it's Al Cole, host of the syndicated talk show People of Distinction, throwing the spotlight on another one of my guests of distinction. This time taking an awesome step forward to great fatherhood in our world with the outstanding work of Jesse Foster. Jesse's the creator of the Father Nation podcast, a show to showcase dads and their committed professional work to help other dads too. Jesse interviews fathers from all over the world to learn from them their deep, dedicated, and sometimes even playful experiences as dads so that they can share their amazing wisdom with you. In Jesse's own words, let the journeys of dads featured on my Father Nation podcast illuminate your path as a dad too. What could be better? Hey. And if you like the message, I want you to run to this website and support Jesse's Father Nation podcast and the great work of all dads worldwide. Go to fathernation.com. That's www.fathernation.com. And remember, hearing about the successes, the aha moments, and even the occasional failures of other dads can help you avoid their mistakes, emulate their successful strategies, and take action yourself to become a better dad. So again, run to this website, fathernation.com. That's www.fathernation.com. Jesse Foster's Father Nation podcast, helping you to imprint the kind of legacy in your family that you desire to create.